Hello, everyone, and welcome to the One Thing webinar. This month, we'll be covering the one thing for sleeping smarter with Shawn Stevenson. Really excited to share this show with you. This is a book that my wife and I read last year, made a really big impact on us. I didn't know at the time that Shawn had self-published the book and has recently been republished with a major publisher. He just came out in hardcover. So the book it's been so successful on its own that a publisher got behind it and they've launched it. Big book tour in the whole 9 yards. That's really gratifying for me because I know that there's a really good product here. I also know that this is a really big deal for your health and your happiness. So I'm happy to talk about it. Real quickly, I want to make sure that everybody understands kind of our format today and how we're going to do this. I will quickly recap some of the big ideas from the one thing because I just can't help but talking about it. That way you'll know what I mean when I talk about line up your dominoes and what the big areas and the big questions are. So I'll hit just a couple of high notes. I'll then bring Shawn on. He and I will talk. He's identified about 5 key points, maybe the first 5 dominoes that we can focus on for a higher quality sleep in all the areas that will impact our lives. And then at the end, we're going to open it up for a good 20 minutes of Q&A. Before the call, I got some of you to practice using the questions toolbar. At any time during this webinar, please introduce your questions using the questions toolbar. I've got staff here. They are looking at your questions. They're flagging the ones that are most applicable to all. And during the Q&A, that's where I'll be going to ask Shawn his questions. So without further ado, I'm going to dive in and just do a quick recap on what this whole one thing is all about. If you had to sum it up, it's really the 80-20 principle, this idea that we got from Vilfredo Pareto, the Italian economist, that 80% of our results comes from 20% of our efforts. Personally, in our experience, the numbers don't matter so much, folks. It's really that the majority of what you want is going to come from the minority of what you do. There's always something that matters more. And what we want people to do is simply keep looking for what's the 20% of my 20%. Until they get to the one thing. And if you start with the top priority, that's how things really start changing in your life and you see massive impact. This whole idea, we ask the question, when we say one thing, you immediately have an objection from everyone. But I've got all these other things to do. I have all these things I want to do. And so we came up with this metaphor of a domino run. Dominoes represent for us all the things that we may do over the course of our career or whatever goal we're pursuing. But when you line them up, the magic happens. So hopefully everyone on this call has had the chance to line up dominoes. And you know what happens when you line them up just so, you can knock over one and have a lot of impact, right? One thing can do many things. We actually looked up while researching the book, and the world record was over 4.5 million dominoes from a group in the Netherlands. Just one domino unleashed all of that action. And then kind of by surprise, we found an article about a kind of an obscure physicist, Lauren Whitehead, who'd written an article in the American Journal of Physics, and he discovered that a 2-inch domino can knock over a 3-inch domino, and a 3-inch domino can knock over a 4.5-inch domino, and so on. Basically, one domino can knock over one that's 50% larger. He built them out of wood, like the image on the screen, and what he described as beginning with a gentle tick, ended with a large slam just 9 dominoes later, and the domino was as big as a door. And so it's exponential in terms of growth. And I loved this for a metaphor for the book, and Gary absolutely gravitated to it. And so we kind of built this graph. If you were to take that domino run that was growing at 50% every time and take it out to kind of its logical conclusion, imagine if you could build real dominoes. By the 18th domino, what started with a 2-inch domino would knock over one as big as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. By the 23rd, it would knock over one as tall as the Eiffel Tower. And just as a reminder, that's over 1,000 feet tall. Unless you take the radio tower off, you're almost as high as the Empire State Building. By the 31st domino, it would knock over a domino 3,000 feet taller than Mount Everest, the tallest place on Earth. And just 57 dominoes into your run, it would knock over a domino, theoretically, that would stretch all the way from the Earth to the moon. And that kind of blew our minds. What begins so small that we don't really notice can grow so big we can barely get our mind around it. I'm kind of fond of looking at this graph. They call it the hockey stick graph. Anything that grows exponentially will look like this. And we believe this is the shape of success. That when you focus on your one thing and you keep doing it, A lot of times you don't get that feedback cycle right away, but when it kicks in, it can often surprise us. Big success will surprise us at how magnificent it'll look on the other end. I've seen this in health, I've seen this in business. And this is all about our habits. When you build a habit of knocking over that domino, that's where you can get that geometric growth in your life and in your business. Well, when we identified that in our journey, we thought, wow, if I knew what my one thing was, I would obviously want to make it a habit. Well, how long does that take? Well, we found research that contrary to a lot of pop science, it doesn't take 30 days or 21 days. On average, it takes 66 days to form a habit. And the wisdom there is when you decide to make a behavior change in your life, you may have to stick at it longer than you think, twice as long as most people will tell you. But the beauty here is once you get the habit working for you, it is absolutely going to take most of the effort off of your plate. The way the scientists graph this out, where that star shows up, that means 95% of the effort to do the activity has now been taken away. That's what it means to form a habit. That means you only have 5% left, right? It's a lot easier. That thing that's helping you so much is almost automatic. Well, we asked the question, and we actually wrote case studies about this for the book, but we went to each of the 7 areas of our lives that we identified in the book: your spiritual life, your physical health, your personal life, key relationships, jobs, business, finances, and we wanted to ask the question, the focusing question. What's the one thing I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier and necessary? You know, what's really fun about our guest today is when we ask this question about your physical health, we looked at exercise, we looked at diet, and one of the things that underlies all of that is your sleep. And I'm not going to steal his thunder, but this has shown up again and again and again. One of our first webinar guests, Charles Poliquin, huge weightlifting guy. He has trained more Olympic athletes, gold medalist, I believe, than anyone else. Fabulous athlete. When I asked him, he said underneath it all is sleep. It is a foundational health principle. So if your health matters to you, you're in the right place. And I'll tell you, in terms of sleep, I've not seen a lot of people that know as much about this as Shawn Stevenson. Let me tell you a little bit about Shawn, and then I'll tell you how I came to meet him. He's a best-selling author and the creator of the Model Health Show. This is a great podcast. It's funny, make you laugh out loud funny, and also really, really informative. It's the #1 health podcast in the country with millions of downloads. He's a graduate of the University of Missouri in St. Louis. He studied business, biology, kinesiology, say that 3 times fast, and went on to be the founder of Advanced Integrative Health Alliance, a company that provides wellness services for individuals and organizations worldwide. He's been in all kinds of magazines, from Entrepreneur to Men's Health. He's been on ESPN and Fox News, and he's done conferences all over the world. This guy really knows his stuff, and he's got a great journey that he'll share with us. He's fought tremendous health battles on his health journey and come out on the other side. So before I bring Shawn on and unmute him, just so he doesn't object in his humility, but when I was traveling to Indonesia with my wife, I picked up some books that I thought I really needed for our life. And one of them was a little book called Sleep Smarter. And on the plane ride over with our family for our big trip, I got to read like 3 books. It was like a 30-hour trip. But the first one I read was that book. And I remember thinking, wow, this is practical. This is really makes sense to me. This is a lot of stuff that would really impact us. Me personally, I sleep like a rock, but my wife doesn't. And I was really looking to help her. So I immediately said, hey, I just read this book. You should read it next. And she did. So before we even got on through the first leg of our trip, we'd both read his book on the same plane flight and started analyzing what are the things that we're going to do to change our sleep habits. And I think we implemented over the course of the next year 15 or 16 of the 20 steps completely, and some others partially. It's very practical stuff. We're going to hit the high notes today. So Shawn, if you're on the call, I'm just going to unmute you here. Can you hear me? Can you say hello? Okay,
fantastic.
Technical difficulties surmounted. Hopefully everybody can hear Shawn. Shawn, just remember to speak up. Welcome to our show, Shawn. I'm sorry for that technical difficulty. Shawn, can you hear me?
I can. Let me go ahead and turn off my audio here.
Oh, you're getting the loop. Sorry about that.
How's that sound?
Sounds good. So really quickly, introduce it. And again, apologies, folks, for the technical difficulties. It happens sometimes with the live broadcast. Shawn, I know that you've been through a big health journey. You had a degenerative bone disease that kind of derailed your plans to be a pro athlete. Can you just tell folks kind of about your journey really quickly, about how you got to become kind of an expert on this stuff and nutrition and sleep and health in general?
Okay, sure. And first of all, thank you so much for the awesome introduction, and that really means the world to me. And I think everybody would really understand hearing that type of feedback from someone like yourself about something that I created. So thank you so much, Jay. So for me, my story is kind of interesting, and yes, definitely I was an aspiring athlete, and I don't know if anybody pays attention to the NFL, but recently they're doing the 40 times at the combine, and a lot of the elite defensive backs and running backs and wide receivers, it's a goal to run a 4.4 40-yard dash, or somewhere in that ballpark. And the majority of them run between a 4.4 and a 4.5. I ran a 4.5 40-yard dash when I was 15 years old in high school. And so I was really primed to do some great things on the football field, but I was really primarily focused as a track athlete. That was my favorite thing. And when I was 15 years old, I was doing a practice with my coach. It was a 200-meter time trial, which is this way you have the curve and the straightaway. And as I was sprinting and coming off of the curve onto the straightaway, my hip broke.
Oh, no.
So I actually broke my hip just from running, which is very abnormal for somebody so young. And being a hard-headed guy, I kept coming to practice for a couple of days before I went and got a scan done. And that's when I found out that the iliac crest, the top of my hip bone, had broken off while I was running.
Ugh.
And so
wasn't that
nobody stopped
painful
to ask, even at that point, how did this 15-year-old kid who should be moving right into his prime at some point close here, how is his bones breaking down so quickly? And I went through the normal, standard of treatment, which is ultrasound, taking some anti-inflammatory drugs, some NSAIDs, some muscle stim. And, because when you're 15 years old, you have the hormones of a mythical beast. So, you're going to turn it around probably. And so I healed up and I kept on playing my sports, but that led to a string of injuries. So about a dozen different injuries up until I was 20. And that was basically the end of my goal and my vision of being a professional athlete for sure. And so ultimately, when I'm 20 years old, I get diagnosed with degenerative bone disease and degenerative disc disease. And so my body was just kind of breaking down internally. And my physician at the time actually had the nerve to tell me that I had the spine of an 80-year-old person when I was 20. And I say that he had the nerve because it's kind of not something that you say to a kid. And because we take it on so deeply, and like my image and my vision of what my life was supposed to be was instantly shattered. And so I went through a lot of reassessment and trying to figure out my place in the world, because now my identity was broken. And that took a long time, especially if you don't have guidance, if you don't have a support system, which I really didn't. And so I ended up gaining over the course of the next 2.5 years about 50 pounds of fluffiness. It wasn't the muscle that I was carrying around before. I was a fluffy, kind of chubby version of myself.
Hey, Shawn,
and
did you say 15 or 50?
Battling with low moods, negative attitude, depression, just not really connected to health and vitality in any form or fashion, really. And ultimately, that all changed when I was 22 and a half. I was getting close to 23 years old. And so this is 2.5 years had gone by with this diagnosis, multiple doctors, and everybody said the same thing. There's nothing you can do about this. I'm sorry. This is something you're just going to have to live with.
Hey, Shawn.
And so
Shawn,
yes.
Did you say 15 or 50 pounds? I just want to be real clear. I didn't want to interrupt you while you were talking, but would you say 50 pounds?
50, yes, definitely. 50.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an important point. So, and it's pretty easy to pack on that weight when you're in college, and also at the time, everybody, I was on what I call the tough diet, right? TUF, typical university food. All right. So I'm jamming down like Papa John's and, McDonald's, all of that stuff. That was really the basis of my nutrition. And so ultimately, everything changed at this moment of a really important decision that I had to make, which was I can buy into what my well-meaning physicians were telling me and just kind of live out the rest of my life in this despair and the fact that I can't do the things that I want to do. I couldn't play catch with my son when he got older. I couldn't, all of these different things that I wanted to do, I wasn't going to be able to do. Or I can take responsibility for my health. I could take responsibility for my life and stop pointing the finger and stop trying to look for this next person to come and help me and to save me and to get my health back. It really was my responsibility because this is my body. But I realized that I didn't know a thing about my own body. And so that took me on a journey. And by the way, that's the most important thing with everybody really taking control of their health and having the health and vitality that you want. And I've worked with thousands upon thousands of people clinically, and I've seen this happen. It's really about you making the decision to have what you want. Most people don't do that. It sounds so simple. A lot of times it's wishful thinking. I hope it's going to get better. I'll try. I wish that this would happen. That's very disempowered in your approach. But when you make a real decision about something, it's like burn the boats. We're taking the island. Come what may. I'm going to accomplish this thing no matter what. Setbacks are going to come. I'm going to push through them. And that's the kind of decision that I made. And I'm a very analytical person, as people would know from my show. And so I'm always breaking things down and trying to find out the root of everything that I'm and it's just kind of built into the way that I think. And so it wasn't like I made the decision and, a unicorn came out with a magical gift or a rainbow shined and the sun came out. That didn't happen. I put a plan together, and that plan entailed 3 major components. One of those was changing the way that I was eating. My initial physician, I asked him, does this have anything to do with what I'm eating? And he told me no. First of all, he looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, this has absolutely nothing to do with what you're eating. This is just something that happens. But then he went ahead and wrote me a prescription for me to eat some drugs, right? So That's the paradigm I'm dealing with. What you're eating doesn't matter, but go ahead and eat these pills anyways. And so that never really did sit right with me. So I changed the way that I was eating. And I asked empowering questions. What are my bones actually made of? What is my spine made of? What is the disc in between the vertebrae and my back made of? And it took me on a journey in understanding things like sulfur-bearing amino acids and polysaccharides and silica and sulfur and all these different things that I was definitely not getting in my diet that helped to regenerate tissues. I was living on Papa John's and Sunny Delight, so I was very, very deficient. And your body is going to automatically work on a hierarchy of needs. Your body needs calcium to clot your blood. So it's going to leach it and pull it from your spine and your hips in particular to help facilitate that process because your blood is a little bit more important than your bones. So, and the crazy thing was I was guzzling milk at the time, but it wasn't the bioavailable calcium that I really needed. Plus your body needs like 200 other nutrients to make bone in the first place that you never hear about. And so I started to eat foods with all those things. That was number one, was eating the foods that actually had the nutrients that I needed to rebuild those tissues. Number 2 was movement. And everybody is well aware this is the kind of popular thing in our culture and how important exercise is. But you need to exercise for 2 main reasons. Number 1, your body requires movement in order to heal itself. That's how your body actually assimilates nutrients, is through movement. And so there's actually studies proving that if you just kind of sit around and take supplements, your body won't really assimilate to a high degree. But if you move, even just walking on a regular basis, you have a radical increase in assimilation. The second part is detoxification. The word exercise is derived from the word exorcism, which kind of means to get the stuff out of you that shouldn't be there in a weird way. It's kind of a creepy word, but that's where the word is derived from. And so it's a really important detoxification practice that if you're not exercising, you're literally kind of starting to turn into like a human, kind of a human cesspool in a way, just building up with a lot of toxins. And so that's that. So those were the 2 things. And then the third thing, and this was the game changer in bringing us to where we are today, was improving my sleep quality. And here's why this matters. If you're not sleeping, then you're not healing. The vast majority of healing that your body does, so we're talking, again, you talked about the 80-20. 80% of this stuff is happening while you're asleep. So that's how important it is. The exercise is incredibly important. The nutrition, incredibly important. But your body does the assimilation, the breakdown, the detoxification. The vast majority of those things are taking place while you're sleeping. So little did I know over those 2.5 years when I'm tossing and turning at night, taking medications to try to sleep and on these pain medications and not getting great sleep, that I was preventing my body from healing. And once I changed some of the things I was doing during the day, which we're going to talk about today, and and radically improve my sleep quality, it's as if the floodgates opened and all of the things that I had wanted started to happen very, very quickly, to the degree that within 6 weeks of putting that plan together, I lost 28 pounds. The pain that I was experiencing, I had 2 herniated discs as well. All of that was gone. That pain was gone. And this was really the birthing of my career, because people at my university, I was still in school at the time, saw the transformation. And they saw that I didn't look like a guy who lost weight. I looked like a guy who was ridiculously healthy, and so that set me on the journey, just to wrap this whole story up, of studying biology and kinesiology in school. And I started working with my professors, became my clients, fellow students. And since that point, I've opened my practice, which I ran for over a decade, and working with people in that one-on-one context, and seeing that once we got people's sleep dialed in, the results they were fighting for so hard with the dieting and the nutrition, all of that started to change by improving their sleep quality. And a big part of that, of course, we could talk about first and foremost, which is the fat loss and weight loss component that a lot of people are concerned about today.
Before we get there, I want to touch on a few things. I had a little bit of my own journey. I had to have back surgery, and before that, I ballooned up to about 246 pounds. And I ended up shedding all of that and getting back to 199 on my health journey. And I remember, like you said, exorcism, right? You're getting the bad stuff out through exercise. One of the things that had happened is I got shut down. My sleep quality fell apart. And I remember my trainer, when I first lost a lot of the initial weight, saying, and I just connected the dots when you were talking, that a lot of the weight I was losing was actually like a buildup of toxins and things that had just not been able to be released in my body. And so was that part of your journey? Like that when you shed all that weight, that wasn't just fat loss, or was it?
Yeah, a lot of that, you just said it yourself. When somebody loses weight, like, quote, weight, what is that really? Our goal should really be to lose fat, to lose body fat.
Right.
So we can lose, one of my good friends, he's the MMA trainer of the year for 3 years in a row. He's Ronda Rousey's one of her trainers, Mike Dolce. And he could see literally a 15-pound weight loss in 24 hours, just by manipulating water, for example.
Right.
And all of the toxicity that's accumulated in the body is going to be eliminated via a water channel, via breathing. So all of these different things have to be open and to enable your body to eliminate waste. And so when you're losing that amount of weight, definitely a big component of that is metabolic waste products as well. It's definitely not just fat.
Cool. Well, that brings us back to fat, which is, the first bullet point you wanted to review to us, is that I think a lot of people don't understand how their sleep quality impacts their diet and their ability to shed weight. So can you share a little bit about that? I remember doing some of this research on our side, and I'll jump in if I have anything to add.
Absolutely. And, there's so much of this research is in Sleep Smarter, but I couldn't put everything in. There's so much. The research is so thick, but we just don't know about this. And that's the kind of irony about this experience, is that, you don't know what you don't know. But there's a recent study done by the University of Chicago, and they had dieters, they put them on a specific diet, and they sleep deprived them. So they were getting 5.5 hours of sleep while having this very specific diet, right? And so when they tracked everything. Now, second phase of the study. Now they're on the same exact diet that they've been on, and now they're getting 8.5 hours of sleep. So they just improved the quantity of sleep that they're getting. And what happened was shocking. They actually lost 55% more body fat than they did on the same exact diet, but they were simply just getting 3 hours less of sleep, right? 55%. And it's fat loss, not weight loss. And that is a shocking number. 55% is a lot. And the only thing here, I didn't say they exercised harder. I didn't say they cut more calories. They changed their sleep.
Wow.
So how is that even possible? And what it really boils down to is that weight loss and fat loss is really all about hormone function. And there is no bigger hormonal player in your life than your sleep, period. And it's during sleep that you release one of the most powerful, really kind of muscle supportive, fat burning hormones, which is human growth hormone. And the reason that human growth hormone is, just to give a very real world example, a lot of us know what it was like when we were kids. Most of us tend to be a lot fitter, a lot thinner. We can quote, get away with a lot more stuff. We could eat some crazy stuff and it wouldn't really bother us. Cut to 20 years later, if you even smell a donut, like you gain 5 pounds, and just a little whiff just hits your nose and it's just like, oh, it smells, oh no, look at my arms,
Right.
And what changed was your hormones, and the big one is a dramatic decrease in the amount of human growth hormone that you produce. And so human growth hormone is secreted in its largest amount during deep anabolic sleep, especially the first stages of sleep, if you're getting sleep during a normal sleep cycle, which we can talk a little bit about that later. So bottom line, human growth hormone, it's blunted if you're not sleeping, getting quality sleep. So that's one of the big players. Also, testosterone is another big player here. And I actually talk about, in one of the chapters of the book, we talk about the relationship that it has with our sexual health as well, and how sleep deprivation leads to all kinds of issues with sexual dysfunction as well. It's because testosterone gets blunted. So testosterone is another big player. Also, insulin. Guys, this is so important. Listen, hear this. This will change your life. It's so powerful. When you hear the word insulin, what do you think about, Jay?
Diabetics.
Exactly. That's the first thing that comes up in our consciousness. But we all produce insulin. It's one of the most important hormones for our existence because insulin, basically, it opens up your cells and enables them to store energy, aka store fat. Right? So insulin is your body's number one fat storing hormone. And if insulin is not functioning properly, we've got a serious problem. And so here's the crazy thing. Just one night of sleep deprivation, just 24 hours of sleep deprivation is enough to make you as insulin resistant as a type 2 diabetic.
Wow.
Just one night, right? Because it really screws up your hormonal rhythm. Right? And so
define sleep deprivation for me, because that might mean something. For me, I mean, is losing a couple of hours of sleep deprived, or is it like I've got a 2-week-old baby and I haven't slept more than 4 hours for 2 weeks?
There's definitely different layers of that. Just like every person is different, there are different definitions for sleep deprivation. One night of sleep deprivation could be just, you staying up and maybe getting 3-4 hours of sleep, or maybe not sleeping at all.
Got it.
But then there's chronic sleep deprivation, which is over an extended amount of time. And this is bringing to bear this new term in our popular lexicon, which is sleep debt. Mm-hmm. Right? You're building up a bigger sleep debt. So you can have a small sleep debt or a big sleep debt. And both of these have solutions for sure. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that there can be some dysregulation with insulin. That's another reason that the fat loss and the weight loss change so dramatically when people start to sleep better. And the last one I'll share really quickly is the kind of big player here when people hear about sleep hormones is melatonin. And melatonin is a very protective, rejuvenative, DNA protective hormone. So we hear about it for sleep, but it's quite possibly the number one most powerful anti-cancer hormone that we produce as well. So none of this matters if you're doing, the brand new insane program, Insanity 2030 or whatever, or, you're just doing push-ups until your arms fall off. You can do that stuff all you want to, but your body is truly changing from sleep. And also none of that matters if your DNA is not functioning properly. Right. So This is getting to the core. Like, we're too focused on calories and not focused on what's actually controlling what the calories do in your body, which is all these different hormones. So this is why it would happen.
One of the studies, Shawn, that I read, and it's like you've already listed off 4 hormones by my count that are probably more important, and I can't name it, but I remember when we were researching this, that when people are sleep deprived, the hormone that allows your body to know it's sated gets depressed, and the one that says I've got the munchies actually gets enhanced. And I remember remembering that because I remember thinking that's so true. Like, I always, when I'm sleep deprived, I tend to eat worse and snack more. And then when our researchers dove into that, they found that was true. So that's probably way down the list, but like, you actually are probably eating worse when you're sleep deprived as well.
Yes, you just said it. I was going to go there as well. So it was done at Stanford University, did a study, and they found that, again, just 24 hours sleep deprivation, you have a dramatic decrease in your body's leptin levels. So leptin is that satiety hormone. Exactly right, Jay. And so when leptin is low, ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, and it even sounds like gremlin, that is going to kick up. Yes. And so that's the thing. It's like we're setting ourselves up for failure. We don't even know it. So we can say, you know what, I'm going to stick to this amazing diet plan that I learned from Shawn. I'm going to stick to, I'm going to make sure that I'm focused on executing what Jay talks about. And then we find ourselves falling off the wagon or falling off our plan. And then we feel guilty, but what we're doing is it's our willpower versus our biology. Our willpower is kind of finite, but our biology is going to compel us to do what it has to do for survival. So that leptin is getting suppressed because your body thinks it's doing you a favor by telling you to eat more, because obviously there's something off here because you're still awake and you need to eat some food to keep you awake.
All right, so we've probably now scared everyone to death. Let's talk about the impact on our brain and productivity, and then kind of flip to some really proactive things they can do to improve their sleep. So hit that number 2, sleep. What's the impact on our productivity and our brain function?
Absolutely. And this is really what I focus on. I'm a solutions guy, but we have to know the value of sleep for sure. And so to start with, especially when it comes to the function of the brain. And so there was a study, and this was published by the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. And they found that poor sleep quality was equal to binge drinking and marijuana use in determining academic performance. And so they did different studies on college students. And they found that those who were poor sleepers were much more likely to earn worse grades and drop out of classes than their healthy sleeping peers, right? And so now I know that the majority of people listening right now is like, well, I'm not in school anymore. How many things are you dropping out of? How many things are you not performing at a high level at because you're sleep deprived? And there was one really kind of startling study that I saw that I came across. I actually quoted this one in the book, and this was published in The Lancet. And this was a study done on physicians. They actually did this study on physicians, and we know how our physicians can be sleep deprived because of the way that system is set up. But what they did was they had the physician to complete a task, right? They had them to do a task. Then they sleep deprived them for just 24 hours and had them come back to do the same exact thing. This time it took them 14% longer to do the same exact thing. And they made 20% more mistakes than when they were well rested. All right. So there's a difference that we have to understand of doing work and actually being effective. Right. We can sacrifice our sleep to get more work done, but the quality of our work, even in our relationships, we're not showing up as our best self. In our work, in our focus on, our spiritual practice, whatever it might be, we're not showing up as our best self, our most attentive, our sharpest version of ourselves because of the sleep deprivation. And just to highlight really quickly why that is. So again, just a small amount of sleep deprivation. So again, this 24 hours, I'm using it as a marker. Don't even get me started on the long-term sleep debt. 24 hours leads to about a 6% reduction in glucose reaching your brain, right? And so this is essentially your brain's food.
Right.
But not all of that is shared equally. The prefrontal cortex and the insular cortex, so these are more evolved kind of, quote, human parts of the brain that are responsible for decision-making, distinguishing between right and wrong, social control, those type of things. That part of your brain loses about 14% of its glucose. So in essence, you start to get dumber, right? And you can't even help it. And so this is where also that your body compelling you to get more glucose back in. So you're going to have a tendency to eat starchy, carby, sugary foods to try to shuttle that back to your brain quickly. But when your brain is starving in fuel, it's going to go cold in those parts of the brain. And what lights up is your amygdala. And this is the part of your brain that's responsible for kind of your survival perspective and that drive just to survive. It can care less about, having a great relationship with your wife. It's going to be snappy. This is it's my cheesy poof, and so that's what's taken over. It's kind of an amygdala hijack takes place. And so that more involved part of your brain is not working and not showing up for you.
Well, and a lot of our listeners are either self-employed or business owners. And so I can tell you personally, I mean, you want to have your head on straight when you're going out there and trying to make a living, especially if other people are depending on you. So we've identified 2 very real, very proven from a scientific standpoint costs to this. What are some of the things that we can do very proactively to immediately get better quality sleep so we can avoid those costs, Shawn?
Absolutely. So I always like to start with the low-hanging fruit. And it can just be simply changing the formation of how you're doing things. You know, even the word in formation, right? If you get things in formation, in the right formation, it can radically change your results. And so exercise is one of these things. So when you exercise matters a lot when improving your sleep quality. And there was a study done by Appalachian State University, and they had exercisers to train at 3 different times. First phase, so phase 1 is training at 7 a.m. Next phase, 1 p.m. Third phase, 7 p.m. in the evening. And each block of these different times was done for a specific period of time. And what they discovered at the end of the study is that when people exercise in the morning versus the 2 other times, they spend up to 75% more time in the deepest anabolic stages of sleep. And they slept longer, and overall, again, their sleep quality's improved. And another little side benefit that's heavily related to sleep is the morning exercises also had a 25% drop in their blood pressure in the evening compared to when they exercise at different times. And what that leads to is, and this is a natural state, your body should do this automatically based on thermoregulation, some other things, some fancy things we could talk about. But the bottom line is that blood pressure reduction in the evening is a signal of the activation of what's called your parasympathetic nervous system. And your parasympathetic nervous system is also known as, this little nickname is the, quote, rest and digest system. The sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight system. And for a lot of us, that is just kind of running on automatic all the time. And so that really speaks volumes to the fact of just getting up in the early part of the day and doing a little bit of exercise is automatically going to pay off dividends when you lay your head down at night. So how do you put this in play for yourself? Hey, if you have the time to hit the gym in the morning, that's all good. If you're an afternoon exerciser, that's all good too. If that's when it fits in your schedule, just get some morning activity in. 5 minutes will do the trick. And so what we're doing by doing that 5 minutes of exercise in the first part of the day when we get up is we're setting our cortisol rhythm. Right? Your cortisol should normally be high in the morning between 6 and 8 a.m. It should be at its peak, then gradually decline as the day goes on. But clinically, we call people that are having issues with this tired and wired because their cortisol is elevated in the evening and low in the morning. It's why it's so hard to get up in the morning and hard to get to sleep at night. And so to help to reset that, by getting up and doing some exercise, just 5 minutes. And so what I like to recommend is 4 minutes of Tabata. You know, so Tabata is, and people just go to Google, so I don't got to explain what it is, but it's just 4 minutes of exercise. And, or I've got
it's kind of high intensity exercise, right? So you get your blood up.
Yes.
And, yeah, got it.
Exactly. So it's 20 seconds of exercise, 20 seconds rest, repeated for a total of 4 minutes.
There you go.
I've got this mini rebounder here in my office called a rebounder. You can jump on that bad boy for 5 to 10 minutes. You could do some body weight exercises for 5 minutes. You can go for a power walk, a quick jog outside, 5 minutes, you know.
Jump rope.
That's all it takes to get that jump. Perfect. Yes, jump rope.
Love it.
So inexpensive, and it's right there. You can go in your garage, knock that out, get your Rocky Balboa, Apollo Creed on, and do something like that.
You know, when you said the morning time,
stretching.
When you said the morning time, I kind of did the touchdown symbol that nobody can see because my wife and I have been morning exercisers now for about 5 years. And it was really hard for us to do it. But I was like, I'd forgotten this part of the book. And I totally was like, oh, gosh, I hope he says, because I tell everybody to work out in the morning. Because for us, I tell them to do that because if it's your one thing for your health, that's time you can control. Nobody is calling to meet with you at 7 a.m., right? That's time that you get to control just for yourself. So even if you're sleepy, there's huge health benefits. And you also can say yes, and other people can't say no for you. So we've got about 20 minutes left, Shawn. I want to hit the other 2 big bullet points, technology and nutrition. And if we can, let's make sure that we have at least 10 or 15 minutes. We've got a lot of people putting in questions, and I want to get to some of them. They're great. So, folks, I want to remind you, use the questions toolbar. If you've got a specific question, please put it in there so that I can ask Shawn when we're done with these last 2 points. So I'll flip it back to you, Shawn. Can you talk to us a little bit about the impact of technology?
Absolutely. So the technology is, first of all, full disclosure, I love my iPhone. I love my Mac products. I think they're phenomenal. I have a couple of favorite shows on TV. But I didn't watch TV for a couple of years while I was working my practice and doing all these different things, but it's all good. Like, these things are valuable, but it's really about taking back control of your time and not allowing these things to run you. And what the research has indicated, and so thick, to the degree the new update on your iPhones comes complete with the screen dimmer that blocks out the most troublesome spectrum of light, that's clinically proven to dramatically suppress melatonin and screw your sleep up. All right, so the new update for your iPhone, if you go, scroll the screen up, and where the flashlight is, there's a little button there that cools off your screen. So you're going to see more and more of this if you haven't already. But the thing that makes my work different is I explain to you exactly why that is and what to do about it. So Harvard researchers discovered that blue light in particular that's emanating from our devices really mimics the spectrum of light coming from the sun. So it triggers your body to produce more daytime hormones, namely cortisol. And again, we don't want cortisol elevated at night, because cortisol and melatonin have an inverse relationship. So when cortisol is high, melatonin gets suppressed. So they found that, yes, indeed, blue light does suppress melatonin. But what they also found was that not all light is the same. Like, they actually confirmed this. So they found that blue light was 2 times more suppressive to melatonin and disrupting your sleep cycle than green light was. Right? So just even a change in the light you're exposed to. And they found that red light was negligible in its impact in suppressing your melatonin. So the closer we can get to the oranger, redder hues at night, and by the way, evolutionarily speaking, what colors will we see at night if we had light would be fire, right? And so we've evolved with that. So changing the way that, number one, here's some hacks. Get Flux on your devices, your laptops, your desktop. The app is called Flux, F.LUX. It's a free app, and it automatically cools off your screen and pulls the most troublesome spectrums of light out of your screen automatically based on the time of year, your time zone, and then it puts it back in the morning when the sun comes up. All right, super easy to install. Just double click it, boom, it's set up on your computer. I've been using it for many, many years. It's awesome.
Nice.
And so that's one hack. So you can, if you are going to hang out, do a little bit of work late, because right now, 100% for certain, it's already concluded. If you are doing work late at night and you think you're going to be getting to sleep, you can absolutely pass out and be physiologically laying on the mattress, but your melatonin is suppressed. And so the quality of your sleep is compromised. You can sleep for 8 or 9 hours and still wake up feeling like a piñata after the party.
So,
right, so that's one tip.
Can we highlight that, Shawn? I know so many people, because I read your book, I'm like, get the TV out of your bedroom. And they're like, that's the only way I can fall asleep. So falling asleep to a TV may be an effective way to fall asleep, but it's a really horrible way to sleep. Correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that speaks volumes to the fact of how we've been manipulated by culture, because for real, your ancestors did not fall asleep with TV. They didn't have a TV. This is a learned behavior, and we are grown-ups, guys. We don't need a nightlight. We don't need television to put us to sleep. And just imagine the weird dreams that you're having as a result of watching TV before bed. But that's a whole other story. But it is definitely suppressing your melatonin. So what the research shows, by the way, Jay, is that it's 3 hours. So for 3 hours, your melatonin is suppressed. So what that leaves you with is you think you're getting 8 hours sleep, but you're actually getting 5 or less, right? So it's a lot of wasted time on that mattress, because it's about the quality, not the quantity. So hack number 1 is install Flux. And for everything else in life, so what about when I'm just hanging out at home, we've got the lights on, that kind of thing, you can get some blue blocking glasses, some cool looking shades. There's some that are cool, there's some that look like, maybe you're just at wood shop at school, but they do the same purpose, which is blocking out blue light.
And those just have yellow.
The best solution.
They have yellow lenses, right? So
orange.
Orange. There we go.
And the darker the orange, the better. The darker the orange, the better. And so the ultimate solution, though, is to give yourself a screen curfew. And this is not the low hanging fruit. This is the most challenging for our world today, because we are in fact addicted to our devices. And I break that down in the book in a fun way, as you mentioned, so that we can kind of laugh at how we've kind of been taken over by our devices, but we can find a way to get through that and actually have more fun, more connection by doing something of greater or equal value to being on Instagram. Right. So what that speaks to is during that curfew, we get out there and, we connect with real people, we connect with our spouse, we connect with our loved ones, we connect with our kids. We read a book, we write, we work on planning for that trip that we want to do. We work on that big book that we've been wanting to write, and actually just writing down notes with pen and paper, and then in the morning you can put it on the computer, that kind of stuff. So it's getting back to what's real and natural and what your genes expect you to do. But again, I'm not the anti-fun guy, so you can hack that by getting yourself some blue blocking shades, use those apps, and you can still use your tech. But the best thing is giving yourself a little bit of curfew.
We have a quick question that's just, I think, better here than waiting. I think it's Lenora that chimed in. So if you're going to set a screen time curfew, what's the optimal time?
Perfect. So this is really important. I mentioned earlier that 3-hour period. Right. I recommend 90 minutes is what I recommend. Minimum 2 hours is stellar, but I would say 90 minutes, especially if you're using those apps, the apps that I mentioned.
Right.
And are also these blue blocking glasses, so your melatonin isn't as suppressed. It's really going to help your body. And people notice this, and I've received hundreds upon hundreds of messages just about people using the blue light blocking glasses and just how improved their sleep quality is just from that one thing. So 90 minutes is ideal if you're using the apps and or the blue blocking glasses.
Got it. All right, so let's hit the last big point, nutrition, and then we can turn it over to Q&A. We still got about 10 or 12 minutes, and I want to honor people's time here. And I know this is a big point. So can you hit really quickly, what's the big stuff we can do with our nutrition to improve our sleep?
Awesome. Okay, so there's a chapter in the book, and this was one of the most fun experiences was writing this chapter. And this is chapter 7 in the book. It's called Fix Your Gut to Fix Your Sleep. And we talk about the intimate connection that your gastrointestinal tract plays on your sleep. And it's mind-blowing. So when people hear about melatonin, some people are aware. And I even had a doctor message me when the book came out. And they were like, I had no idea about this. I didn't know for many years either that, we're led to believe in our culture just kind of, if we know just a little bit about the way that hormones work, that your pineal gland is secreting melatonin, all right? But here's the thing. You can actually have your pineal gland removed. I don't recommend doing that, but pinealectomy. And what happens is you still have about the same amount of melatonin in your system, but it's located in your belly. So you have 400 times more melatonin stored in your gut than you have in your pineal gland, in your brain. All right, so that sleep hormone we're talking about is stored in your stomach, all right, in your not your stomach, your gastrointestinal tract. So most times people think about their stomach. So the environment in your belly matters a lot. And if you're doing things that are disrupting that environment, that are hurting the cells in your gut, you are hurting your sleep. And so that's just one of the pieces. There are many, many other factors, but it's detailed in the book. But here's what we need to do. Number one, we have to support the microbiome. So what the research found was that bacteria in your gut communicate with cells that help to secrete serotonin and these other hormones that we're talking about in relation to sleep. So serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. About 95% of that is stored in your gut as well and produced in your gut. So serotonin is known as this kind of feel-good neurotransmitter, and it's a, quote, antidepressant. A lot of drugs are focused on the function of serotonin. Your belly's producing that, and the microbiome, the bacteria in your gut, help to dictate how much is getting produced and how efficient it is. So we want to make sure that we're avoiding things that damage our gastrointestinal tract. So agricultural chemicals kill your microbiome, the friendly bacteria in there. So pesticides, fungicides, those kind of things. Processed foods, even chlorinated water. So make sure that you have a water filter that actually removes chlorine. And so those type of things, we want to avoid things that damage the gut, but then we want to support the gut with making sure we're eating, quote, good, I call these good sleep nutrients. And so some of the things that support the microbiome are going to be probiotic foods. So these are kind of traditional foods in cultures like kimchi and sauerkraut and pickles, yogurt, kefir, those kind of things. But we also need prebiotics, which these are the substances that the probiotics actually need to survive. They eat prebiotics. So you can take even probiotic supplements until you become a walking, talking probiotic, but it's not going to matter if your probiotics can't stay there because they're not getting fed. So prebiotics foods would be like Jerusalem artichoke, onions, garlic, things like that. Now, some of the good sleep nutrients that you need to target, and I did a whole section on this as well, and this is super important because just changing your nutrition can change your sleep a lot. And so making sure that we're getting a great source of potassium, for example. And there was a study that was published in the journal Sleep that found that potassium is helpful for people who have trouble staying asleep. Good sources of potassium, bananas are not the best source. Plus, you get the sugar issue, which is a whole other subject in disrupting your sleep. So avocados, fantastic, more than you're going to get from a banana. Broccoli, crimini mushrooms. There's a great, the highest source of potassium is a sea vegetable, a sea veggie called dulse. So that's one. I'm going to share two more really quickly. Vitamin C. Vitamin C is critical to your sleep health as well. And there was a study published by the Public Library of Science, and they found that people with low levels of vitamin C had more sleep issues than people who had adequate levels of vitamin C, and they were more prone to waking up at night. So this isn't saying take a vitamin C supplement. Let's eat more foods that are rich in vitamin C. Camu berry, casserola cherry, everyday foods like bell peppers, green leafy vegetables. And I'll share one more really quickly if we have time, like 30 more seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I don't want to not mention this one. It's omega-3 fatty acids. People hear about this a lot as well, but the University of Oxford actually did a study, and they found that omega-3s can help people get deeper, more restful sleep. And this is one of the biggest deficiencies in our country today and in the world at large, really, are these anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids. So there's going to be things like chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, fatty fish, walnuts. There's so many. And, of course, supplementation is okay, but we want to go food first because that's what your genes are going to recognize most readily. So I hope that helps everybody out. And we want to get 3 to 5 servings of these good sleep nutrients in foods every single day.
Well, I live in Austin, Texas, so I'll eat breakfast tacos with avocados 3 times a day. I'm good for that. The
tacos, yes.
Oh, yeah. So I'm just going to recap. So honor your gut, right? Don't eat stuff that'll kill the good stuff in your gut. Probiotics, prebiotics, potassium-rich foods. What were the last two? You had omega-3s, and there was one other one. Vitamin C.
Vitamin C.
There we go. Just in case people wanted to recap that in their heads. I know that the potassium, Wendy and I, we realized that was not something we were getting. You really underscore it. And we actually ended up kind of following one of your recommendations and getting a potassium oil that we put on before we go to sleep. And I'll just say, I used to get cramps. I'm a tall guy. I would get cramps in my feet and my calves.
Oh, that's the magnesium oil, Jay.
Oh, the magnesium oil. There we go. That did magic for me. That was huge for me in terms of staying asleep. So I guess magnesium would be the next then.
That's the big boy. I probably should have led with that one, but I felt the time pressure, man. We want to make sure that everybody can get to the Q&A.
Yeah. Well, cool. So magnesium oil, definitely look it up. So I've got a couple of questions, and I've been looking. There's patterns. So there's like 5 questions that deal with what is the optimal sleep pattern, like what's the magic number of hours, or if you have weird things like, they work in a hospital 4 hours down, an hour up, 3 hours down, or a night shift. Can you talk to us a little bit about how important the sleep pattern is?
Absolutely. Okay, so what the research indicates is that timing your sleep is like timing an investment. If you invest even a little bit at the right time, you can get a lot of reward. However, if you invest at the wrong time, things might not work out that great for you. And so what the research shows is that between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is this, quote, money time sleep, just to stay on the investment analogy, where we get a radically higher incidence of secretion of human growth hormone in that window. You don't get as much secretion if you're going to bed later than that. Also, higher levels of melatonin, higher levels of release of these reparative enzymes that build your body up, repair your tissues, and bring you back better happen during that sweet spot of sleep. So if you're missing out on that, and so this leads to the conversation about, so let me say this really quickly. The number of hours really, we need to stop paying attention to that in our culture. Quantity matters, but not as much as quality. There is definitely a diminishing return once we get under 6 hours of sleep. But 6 hours is really solid if somebody is sleeping smarter, if somebody is employing the strategies we've been talking about, because they're going to get better sleep than 99.9% of people who are sleeping for 8 hours or 9 hours in our country, because they're actually secreting those hormones that we've been talking about. That's really where the magic is. So don't buy into the cookie cutter. You need to get 8 hours of sleep. It really depends on you as a person, your activity level, your stress load. All of that stuff can be put into play. But I say 6 hours because that's 4 full sleep cycles, which are about 90 minutes each, taking you out of all the stages of sleep, which is a cycle between REM sleep and non-REM sleep and the stages in between. So cool. There's that piece. And last thing with that is the overnight work. Working at a university for so many years, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of medical students, a lot of nurses, and seeing the befores and afters of somebody who's just getting to school in the program, and then seeing them 4 years later after clinicals and after working, and the amount of weight that they would gain and the health issues. And it just got to be, and these are the people who are entrusted with our health, and they get ran through it, and they're not even out of school yet. Right. And so in the book, I actually talk about really popular studies that it seems like people are not having the opportunity to hear about, but done on nurses. And they found that nurses who work the overnight shift have about a 30% greater incidence of breast cancer than the normal population. And this is well known in the medical community, but nobody's really talking about it. And this is because, guess what we talked about earlier, melatonin is probably the most powerful anti-cancer hormone that we produce. And if you're up at night when it's trying to be secreted, because melatonin is secreted when you're in darkness. And if you're up working in the fluorescent lights in a hospital, guess what? Melatonin is not on. And your powerful anti-cancer hormone can't do its job. So that's just one of the things. Also, radically higher incidences of heart disease, obesity, all these things seen in populations of nurses who work overnight, police officers, firefighters, and the people who are taking care of us. We haven't been taken good care of as a society because the system is not constructed in a way, hey, if you don't got seniority, you've got to do this. And so I actually propose a better alternative to that, because we definitely need people up to take care of things in the evening for sure. But there is a better way to go about it so that everybody can get adequate sleep and show up better, and also not lead to that greatly increased risk of mortality that people should not be struggling with.
I love that. And I have my neighbor and good friend is an anesthesiologist, and he does the whole 24 hours on, 48 off thing. And I can't imagine. I've got a couple more questions. We're running low on time. I'm trying to load up. Got about 4 people asking about supplements that are okay. And they range from like to help you get to sleep, like melatonin, Tylenol PM, all the way to Benadryl. And what do you do for kids in that case? So are there safe supplements? I know you said first choice is get real foods that help us. Are there supplements that people could use to help them get to sleep that you would recommend?
Yes, full disclosure yet again, I helped keep Tylenol PM in business when I was sick and kind of going through my issues with my degenerative bone disease, degenerative disc disease, which I don't even know if I mentioned that 9 months later I got a scan done, and with the 2 herniated discs that I had retracted on their own, and actually grew half of an inch and regenerated some of the tissue in my spine. And to the degree that, my physician, he couldn't believe it. And he said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And that was really the culmination of my career from that point on, was like, your body really it knows what to do already to make you well. We just need to provide it with the raw materials that it needs. So Tylenol PM, wow, the side effects. Just since the time is running short, just go to Dr. Google, type in Tylenol PM. No, first let's talk about the big guys. So type in Ambien and emergency room visits and have your mind blown. We're talking about double the risk of mortality, of early death, from taking just 20 pills a year. All right, wow. We're really looking down the wrong track for that. But in my practice, everything is fair game. Everything has its place, but we don't want to go there first. We don't want to go to Tylenol PM first. Massive issues with gastrointestinal bleeding and all kinds of crazy stuff. Melatonin, really quickly, that's the big sleep supplement that people go into, because it's like, no, I'm going to do it natural, so I'll go and get a natural supplement. That's hormone therapy. You know, just because it's at Whole Foods or it's at, Walmart doesn't mean that it's safe. And so what the research is showing now, and the best study that I've come across, the most comprehensive study, is that taking supplemental melatonin, it doesn't stop your body from producing its own, but it does downregulate your receptor sites for melatonin. So basically what that means is you can keep producing melatonin, but your body can't use it. It will stop being able to use melatonin properly, and you don't want that to happen. So melatonin is great in spot treatments, like just if you're changing time zones or, it's just a day or two just to get your sleep back on track. But you don't want to rely on that and use that consistently because it can cause big problems. So what do we do? I'll give you two since we don't have time. We'll start with the lightest one. The lightest one is chamomile tea. A lot of people hear about that. Clinically proven to relax muscles, to calm your nervous system. Super gentle. Start that practice, having a nice cup of chamomile tea before bed. Something stronger in that kind of realm of herbal medicines would be Valerian Root. Again, clinically proven it's a mild sedative, but humans have been using that for thousands of years, actually. And so we want to go natural first, follow the good sleep hygiene, the good sleep strategies, because even with supplements, we're treating a symptom. If we do the other stuff right, the supplements won't matter, or they can just be icing on the cake. So I definitely recommend certain supplements, and then we can move into the more isolated compounds like 5-HTP, L-tryptophan, which are precursors to melatonin. So I'm a big fan of many of these things, but we want to address the lifestyle factors first.
Cool. Well, man, we've run out of time. I mean, I knew that you would do this. So you would just drop a ton of bombs and leave me wanting more. Can folks, first off, on the screen is sleepsmarterbook.com. I really want to encourage people to go there. You've got tons of free stuff. It is really a smart book. So thank you so much, Shawn, for being here. I really appreciate you being on the show. Fabulous book. Folks, if you are here next month, make sure you tune in. On the April 27th, we're going to have Tim Grawl. He is one of my heroes in publishing, has helped more people be successful. And if you're in business, he dropped amazing information on me about the power of email marketing and how to do it right over social media and everything else. And he's just been living in this world of book marketing, which you would not think would be that huge, but he's a very, very smart guy. You'll love it. Everyone will get a copy of this that register for the webinar. It's recorded, or you can go back and find it on theonething.com/webinars. And finally, you can reach out to all of us at our Twitter handles at The One Thing, myself, Jay Papasan, and Shawn. If you did not get your question answered, he agreed to let us put his Twitter handle up here at Shawn Model. Throw a question at him. Super nice guy. And if you can't tell, knowledgeable about this beyond words. So thank you so much for tuning in this month. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning. We got them sorted out, and hopefully you got a lot of benefit for being here. Until next month, this is Jay Papasan. We'll see you.